I am Dr.Ashwin Dobariya welcomes you to Programming in C video series. In this video we will discuss one programs of simple interest calculations. Now as you know that the simple interest calculations we have one formula that is PRN divided by 100. So in this video we will learn that how we can write a simple interest calculation program and how you can identify the various variables and the data types. So let's start with the definitions. In this definition, C program which calculates simple interest. Now see, the definition is only like that, which will not clearly mention that how many variables you require to declare, and so based on the logic of the program you have to identify the number of variables, right? So first at least you should aware about the formula of the simple interest calculations. So what is the formula of simple interest calculation? PRN divided by 100. So PRN means what? So if you want to calculate the simple interest, now I think all of you are aware about that. Let me take one example. Suppose you want a home loan from any bank, right? Then in home loan we generally ask that I required a 10 lakh loan or a 15 lakh loan. So that amount is our principal amount. Suppose you want to take a loan of 10 lakhs of home loan, right? So 10 lakh is your principal amounts. Then R. So the home loan rate is like a 6% or 7% or 8%. It may vary. So rate of interest, right? Based on the amount we have to pay the interest. So rate of interest of your home loan, that you have to mention in the R. And how many years, what is the time period you want to take a loan? Suppose you want a 5 years loan or a 10 years, or what is the limit of your repayment? So suppose you want to take a loan for 15 years or a 20 years. So that number of years, it is your N, right? So in that way, and divide by 100. This is a simple formula to calculate the simple interest. Now if we talk about in terms of programming, then how many variables we require in that? So to calculate the simple interest, we have to input, how many things we have to input? So one is principal. So for that we require one variable P. Then we have to also input a rate of interest. So R is another variable, and number of years. So N is another variables, right? So it means we have to provide 3 values, and for that we required three variables. Then whatever answer is generated by this formula, it will store in one variable, right? So we require another variable that is that will store the simple interest. So in that way we can identify the list of variables to calculate the simple interest, right? So let's see discuss the logic of this program. So for logic, let me take one demo value. Suppose you want 10,000 loan from a bank, and the rate of interest is 8, and the number of years period is 15. So what is the interest that you have to pay of this loan, right? So step number 1 is, in our program we have to input 3 values. One is principal, rate of interest, and the number of years. Then after the second steps is, this value will be substitute in the formula. So P means the 10,000, R means 8, and N, and whatever answer will be generated, that will store into SI, and SI is our actual output. So if we put these values and if you calculate in a calculator, then value will be 203.52. It means the interest will be at 200 rupees and 3 rupees, right? 203 rupees and 52 paisa. So this is the one demo, or you can say sample. Based on that you can understand what is the concept of simple interest. Now if we convert this thing in a programming form, then we have identified total 4 variable P, R, N and SI. Now the next important thing that we have to identify, that is the data type of this variable. So now see, according to this value we can assign the data type. Now see, all these values are without decimal points, and whenever the value you want to manage without decimal points, then we have a 2 data type, either integer or you can say long integer. Now friends, what is the difference between integer and long integer? If we declare all these variables as an integer, then there is a limit of this integer data type. Limit means what? We can store the minus 32768 to plus 32767. It means we cannot store above 32767 value. It means suppose if I want to store 35,000, then if I declare this variable as an integer, then 35,000 value I cannot store because it is the upper limit value of integer data type. So integer data type can only store the 32767. It means 32,767. That is the maximum limit of this integer variable. This detailed concept will discuss in a separate theory video, that is the data type concept, but here just for your understanding, because generally the long amount is bigger, right? And whenever the values are bigger, then instead of integer we have to add one modifier, that is long integer. And if we declare any variable with the long integer, it means which will expand the limit of integer, right? So expand the means now we can store the lakhs in crore values also in this, right? So it will not give any error in the output. So that is the important thing that here you have to remember. Now we know that if there is a division operations, then the output will be always in a fraction value, or you can say point value. So for that SI is another variable that we have declared as a float, and this is the actual logic of this program. SI is equal to PRN divided by 100 and it will generate 203. Now see, one thing is here PRN all are integer, 100 is also integer. So in previous video I told you that if all operands are integer, then ultimately it generates the integer value. So see here it generate only integer 203. It's not an exact value, right? And 0.00 due to the SI is declared as a float, so it will add the 0.00. But it doesn't give the exact value after decimal points because all are integer. So it generate only integer answer. So how we can correct this output? So the corrections we can do using two different methods. One is PRN, we know that all are long integer, but 100 we can write like 100.0. So this becomes a float, and we know that if one operand means all variables, on that we actually perform any operations, right? So here 100 becomes float. If one of the operand float, then compiler will generate a float value. Now see, if we write 0.0, now instead of 0.00 it gives the exact value after decimal points, right? So remember this point, whenever you are performing division operations, then one operand must be a float, then and then you will get the correct result after decimal point. So this is one way to mention the floating value. Now other way is you can mention the float as a typecasting. Now what do you mean by typecasting? That we will discuss in detail in a data type concept, but the typecasting, the meaning of that, whatever value you mention over here, first it will convert in a float. So now see, the first operand becomes a float, and one operand is float, then overall answer will be a float. So these statements and this statement both gives a similar answer, right? So here float means we have mentioned a explicit typecasting. This is known as a explicit typecasting, and here this is known as a implicit typecasting. Now what do you mean by explicit and implicit typecasting? That we'll discuss in the separate video, right? So just for your understanding, explicit means we are explicit mention the data type, right? But implicit means by default. So if one operand is float, then compiler will automatically convert the other operands in a float. In other word, in technical word we can say compiler will automatically promote a data type from integer to float. So data type is always promoted from the lower to higher. Why it is lower? Because we know that the integer data type occupies 2 bytes of memory, but long integer occupies 4 bytes of memory. Similarly, float is also occupies the 4 bytes of memory. This is the reason that we'll discuss in details, right? But to generate the correct output in a float, either we have to make any operand as a float, or we can do the explicit typecasting. So typecasting is nothing but it is a process where the compiler will convert from one data type to another data type. So actually what happened over here, PRN is declared as a long integer, but while performing the operations over here, compiler first convert these long integer value into float. So now these operands, now see here, P first convert into float, and after that if one operand is float, then ultimately it will generate the float value and it store into SI. So these things happen in the programs. Now let's discuss in the Turbo C, right? So if we write this program, then first is the documentation part, where we can mention the definition of the programs and the authors who actually develop these programs. Then in the next part we have to include two header files, stdio.h for printf and scanf function, conio.h we have to include for clear screen and getch function. After that, in a main function, first we have to declare the variable. So in this program we require the long integer 3 variables. And see, whenever we mention long integer, then in scanf we have to use %LD. For only integer we are using format specifier only %D. But if the data type is long integer, then format specifier is LD. So these things you remember. Enter the principal first, then whatever value is entered, that will be stored in a P. Similarly, we will input the value of rate of interest, and that rate of interest will be stored into R. Then next is the number of years, that will stored into N. And after that, see here, float we have done the typecasting, then PRN multiply, then divide by 100. So whatever answer will be generated, it will store into SI, and finally the simple interest will be display using %F and SI. Let's see the programs, right? We will input the same value over here, 10,000, 8 and 15, right? So here suppose 10,000, then the rate of interest is 8, and suppose the total years is 15, right? So here it display this value. Now suppose if we use another example, suppose 3,000, then it's a smaller value, so we can understand easily. Rate of interest is 5%, and suppose number of years is 10, then 1500 it's a simple interest, right? So in that, but suppose if we do not mention over here, for example, typecasting, and if we execute the same programs again, it will give not a correct answer. Suppose again 3000, then 5 is rate of interest and 10 is the number of years, right? So 100 it display, but after decimal point it displays 00. If I give a odd value, for example 1 2 3 4, 1234, 5% and 10. Now see here, now after here 670 is okay, but after decimal point it gives only 00. So if we place float over here, then this will generate the exact decimal value. Now if I run this program, if I input the same value 3000, 5 rate of interest and 10, just again I place 1 2 3 4, then 5% and 10, right? And if I run, okay, now see there is some issue in that. Yeah, again I run these programs. 1 2 3 4, rate of interest is 5, and suppose it's a 10. Okay, now see every time, see here, this is the issue relevant to the data types. It's not a issue of the program. Program is correct, right? There is no issue in that. Yeah, so if I give another value like 5000, 5% and 10, so it gives the 2500. And suppose after decimal point, if we want to display only 2 digits, then here you can write percentage f, in between you can write 0.2. So now 0.2 means what? After decimal point it will give only 2 digits. Now see, if I input 5000, 5 and 10. So now see, after decimal point which will give only 2 digits. So in that way, friends, there is no issue in this program code, right? But sometime if the compiler is vary, then the output may be vary, right? But the overall concept of the simple interest is, first we have to input 3 value principal rate of interest, then here typecasting is important, then and then it will give a correct output. Friends, I have also given this source code link in our this video description part, so you can download these source codes in your laptop or a desktop and you can do the practice. So I hope, friends, you understood this concept of simple interest and how we can write this. So in this video or description part, I have also given the link of other theory and practicals videos for your reference. So please, friends, share this video, like this video and share with your friends. And for getting the upcoming videos updates, subscribe this channel. So whatever video I will upload in a future, that you can get. And in next video again we'll discuss another practical program, that is C program of various distance unit conversion. It means we'll input a value in kilometer, and after that this value will be converted into the meter, feet, inch and centimeter. So how we can write this kind of programs, that we'll discuss in our next videos. So thank you everyone.